Good morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Legend and welcome to MEP, the Map Enlargement program, the series where I take a look at the smallest maps in World of Tanks and see how they can be sized up to a 1000 by 1000 meter format. We have seen what happened with the Ensk region map, but what kind of process can we form after analyzing the differences between the old, smaller version and the new, bigger version? There are several general steps in the process to apply it towards our upcoming maps. Step number 1, determining new borders. How much area will be added towards the north, south, east or west side? Which side of the map has the best potential to be extended? With Ensk, for example, more area was given towards the east than the west, while the north and south gained a similar area. Step 2, determine general area themes which correspond with current out-of-bounds areas. What kind of environment, structures and formations can currently be observed outside the map borders? These elements will inspire the newly added areas. The example of Ensk being more city areas on the west and nature areas with a cliff and river or a leaf to the east. Step 3, restructure relief of the new areas. Flatten out the more rough mountainous grounds and level lower areas up to get rid of extreme reliefs that could hinder the comfort of gameplay. On the Ensk, the hill in the northeast corner has been flattened down quite a lot and the industrial terrain in the south is leveled for the spawn location. Step 4, restructure large elements within the themed areas. Check if large structures can stay the same or are in need of restructuring for comfortable gameplay. Again, with the industrial area in the south of Ensk, the buildings are lowered in quantity, which created more spacing from each other to have better traverse for tanks. Step 5, restructure or removal of smaller elements within the themed areas. What small objects, buildings, rubble or destructibles could better be moved or removed? In Ensk, most of the destructible buildings in the west have been removed to steer tanks away from that area and let it become the new light tank scout range, and the water tower has moved towards the middle to avoid giving one team the advantage. Step 6, add new elements to balance things out. What small objects, buildings, rubble or destructibles could better be added? This time, alongside the middle part of the cliff in Ensk, some buildings were added to function as hard cover to create a small front line on that flank. And step 7, restructure the existing smaller part of the map, making it more suitable in its bigger form. This basically boils down to having onslaught elements being applied with the map. With Ensk, that means that the central plaza and train tracks have been opened up with some train wagons and buildings removed. Now we use these 7 steps and apply them towards another small map and see how it will turn out to be. And for this video, that map will be Himmelsdorf, which we are going to change to Himmelsburg. Berg, of course, being the more commonly used in the names of large cities within Germany. So how would this theoretical Himmelsburg map look like? For the first step, we are going to extend the map 150 meters all around. All sides of the newly Himmelsburg have some interesting features that would be fun to include. Also, the east and west sides do have a limited amount of featured space, since one side is water and the other side is bordered by walls on top of mountainous cliff sides. And I wouldn't pick one over the other where I need to, well, terraform a lot more in comparison to the original Himmelsdorf. For example, if I would leave the water side as it would be, I need to make more room at the cliffside, and by doing that I need to tear down the entire cliff or move the cliff even further up. And I want to maintain most of the, well, enormous features that is now included outside of the borders of Himmelsdorf. So with each side extended, what are the general themes corresponding with the current out of bounds areas? Well, in the north it is the continuation of the city. This will form the backline beyond the north spawn for the last stand and for flanking beyond. The government building also gives a few additional sub-flanks with a slightly elevated courtyard. This area will pretty much work similarly to the current outermost roads going horizontally across the map. The northeast will be the city against the city wall or the cliffside. This will contain some more greenery as the city borders against the wall or cliff that would connect the longest routes around the map. On the east side, this will be the castle garden area between the castle walls. A lush garden area with plenty of bushes and trees, which can also feature close quarters gameplay. Moving along the southeast is the city between the walls and the water. It will be quite similar to the northeast corner to connect the outermost routes, now with more smaller buildings, but with a less direct route through across the buildings due to the sporadic city design we also see outside of the original map, which I also like to keep since it adds some more unique elements or city structure towards the new map. The south will contain a city portion across canals with bridges as connection points. This will also function like a backline beyond the southern spawn, also for the last stands and for flanking around. But it is more open than the northern backline due to the lack of buildings, instead being the open canals. In the southwest, the railways will continue as we move towards the harbor. It will be a mix of the railway tracks with several buildings in between, going towards the more residential part of the harbor. The west contains the harbor itself with the destroyed Bismarck battleship. It will mostly contain the narrow harbor road right next to the city river, with the Bismarck now being destroyed and actually beached across it. The northwest will continue the harbor area, now being more industrial, with also some ruined houses and railways. These parts will be more destroyed because of bombings, creating a more chaotic terrain, mirroring a similar state to the southeastern corner, containing more cluttered elements compared to the side of the other team. But we'll also need to restructure some relief of the new areas, either flatten it out or hill it up. So at the harbor area, we need to level it with the railway and rise the water level. We would already create quite some amount of new flanks, so having one of these flanks even more isolated from the rest of the map seems a bit too much. Now on the other side, we will flatten down the route towards the castle garden. Also, the castle garden will be slightly lower than the space around the castle itself, going only slightly up against both the outer walls of the castle and the cliff sides with the city wall, giving tanks around the same time to get all the way uphill, since you need to drive a little bit further around to reach it. Also creating dips within the garden with a quite similar curve to what we now see in the spaces around the castle. This way there are more opportunities for close quarters combat for the more hull down tanks, while also having still some rubble for all round heavies to poke or side scrape in order to break an eventual hull down fest. With the terrain flattened out a bit more, we're going to also restructure some large elements within the themed area, creating more holes and breakthroughs within the inner wall between the castle and the garden, avoiding the castle gardens to become a almost completely isolated flank. Also remove the houses in the center of the castle garden so the area could be more defined as a green garden, with some more cover through inclines and declines on this part of the map, where most of the map is still hull down positions, most predominantly throughout little piles of rubble. Make the canal smaller and let the church area also be a connection point towards the south side, since the northern spawn point has more avenues behind their spawn location with more cover. Having only 3 bridges across the backline of the southern spawn point seems a bit too imbalanced, even though it might not see much use, only for combat on the horizontal axis. Also, for better passability, move the outermost bridges to align better with connections towards the other areas. And finally, beach the Bismarck to act as cover for the harbor side. The most far-fetched feature, but having the Bismarck beached and tipped over is an epic last piece of frontline cover that we need on that relatively open side, with pieces of the superstructure and detached cannons creating around 3 or 4 piles of scrap where heavy or medium tanks could brawl against each other at very close range. However, these piles will be high enough for it to be utilized only for side scraping and not as yet again more hull down positions. Meanwhile, the hull of the ship itself will cover most of the pathway from campers settling in the harbor areas at the southeast and northeast corner. Then for restructuring some smaller elements, we just remove a few more houses in the castle area just to make the area slightly less confusing and disorienting, with some of the houses being directly in the clear path upwards. We also want to add new elements to make the map look more complete, and this will be mostly done with added bushes and trees within the castle garden area, giving some opportunities for sneaky ambush tactics with the concealment of the foliage, and some more rubble here and there to give more defensive possibilities in longer straight roads, especially in the north. And finally, we are going to take a look towards the existing part of the map, changing some elements here and there, making it more suitable for the bigger map, which in the basic will include the onslaught and random event elements. So for Himmelsdorf, there will be more rubble across the train tracks, more passages and ingrowth of houses in the central area, and of course the crashed blimp that creates a path from the castle to the banana road below. But with that, we are also relining some train carts and add extra railway buildings on the most western side to create some more cover towards the harbor area. Then further across the map, mostly at the castle wall, separating the castle area with the castle garden area, also giving some extra bits and pieces of rubble So poking across those passages through that wall will be less risky. And with that, we got the entire Himmelsburg map covered. I will say that this map will definitely include some more interesting positioning and newly added flanks that will definitely spice up the gameplay. However, I think that still having the original Himmelsdorf even for higher tier is something that I really wouldn't mind. It isn't necessarily a bad map, but just adding some extra flanks. Most of them still have the opportunity for you to retreat from them and choose another flanking possibility will definitely make this map also quite a functional one for random gameplay. It still might be a bit confusing at the parts where there are a lot of buildings with small spacing in between each other. But in the contrary, that will also give some extra fun positions for people to occupy whenever they are, well, the last one standing. Which I think is also pretty valuable to have inside maps. So that was it for this video. Hope you find it very interesting. And I will see you next time with the next map in, well, a couple of months, I guess. Because creating these maps has taken a lot of time. And for the upcoming one, it also is already being proven to be quite a hassle to complete. So have a little bit of patience for that, and I will see you next time. Laters!